I'm Al Brundage, and my wife Bee is passing out some handouts to you. Also on the panel this morning are Herb Gregerson. Herb Egender. I don't know why Herb Gregerson's name came to mind. Herb Egender, he and his wife Erna have been doing rounds for many, many years out in the Colorado area, and in fact all over the country. They're well known in squares and rounds and very well rounded, and we're very pleased to have them on our panel this morning. Bob and Marguerite Frye are with us from Florida. They too have had extensive backgrounds in rounds and squares and have a very successful program which includes round and square. And that's kind of the subject of our panel this morning, discussing and giving you some insight as to how we feel about rounds as pertains to the square dance program. I'm going to start out with a little, thank you for closing the door. That'll help a little. I'm going to start out with a little history and background with the idea in mind, are rounds, and with a question, are rounds a component part of the square dance program? And I hope the answer is yes, and I'm going to point out a few historical reasons why it should be yes, as well as some up-to-date reasons as why rounds should be thought of as a very important part of what we're doing. When our forefathers came to this country, of course our program was completely different than it is today. But rounds, in effect, or waltzes and polkas, mazurkas, schottisch, those kind of dances were done. And were done at the dances where quadrilles and the long ways, contras, and what squares there were also done. It was kind of a mixture. So traditionally, our whole dance background pertains to our folk dance or country dance and square dance did include rounds, and rounds weren't quite as formalized in those days. Early circle dances, cotillions and Sicilian circles, things like that, many of them incorporated round dance movements. Many of them incorporated round dance steps. And I feel that some of our rounds and our basics came from some of those early dances. And rightly so. We had a good background. Even in the early days, coming along into the 1800s and early 1900s, our country dances and our square dances, many of them included round dance steps. How many of you have heard of the waltz quadrille, for instance? Sure. How many of you ever danced the waltz quadrille? Beautiful. Consequently, in order to dance a waltz quadrille, well, when I was a kid, in order to dance it, you didn't have to waltz, really. You had no formal training. You just got up and you did it, and somehow or other, you'd kind of learn to waltz. But nowadays, it doesn't have to be that way. We can teach people to waltz, and we can incorporate some of our round dance movements into square dances. How many of you have ever, in a square dance, done a polka promenade, for instance? A few. Good. So we incorporate the two-step or the polka in some of our square dance movements. I feel that rounds have always been a part of our picture. I see no reason why they shouldn't be, and perhaps we should add strength to our history and our heritage so that we can get a even stronger feeling of dance by including rounds in our square dance program. We're hoping to point out other reasons why here with this panel. One of the big turnarounds in our dance history was Lloyd Shaw. I don't have to tell you who he was, you know. And Lloyd Shaw, Dr. Shaw, recommended that rounds be used in our square dance program. He used them himself. It was an integral part of what he had planned for our modern square dance movement. And I don't think we should deviate too much from that, because overall I feel that that was a very successful program, and his ideas were well accepted, they were sound, they included references and backgrounds and research that none of us have available, or at least we don't take the time to search out, but he did. And he made a thorough study of this dance movement as to its background and history, and a great deal of foresight went into his thinking as to where it was going and how it was going to get there. Rounds were an important part of that. The transition from our early dances, our country dance, or one-night stand type dance, if you will, into our modern square dance, of course, was due, I think, in large part to Dr. Shaw and the people that went to Shaw for help and guidance. And in the early days, we just threw on rounds. We'd do a set of squares, and then the band would play a waltz, and everybody would get up and waltz. And the band would play a polka, and everybody would get up and polka. And the band would play a schottisch or mazurka or hambo or something like that. Many of them folk dances, and the people would get up and they would just do it. And there wouldn't necessarily be set routines. It would be freestyle, open dancing. In those days, they were called rounds. And one of the first bands that I had, we played squares and rounds. Well, we didn't do any round dance routines, but we did play the polkas and the waltzes and the foxtrots and couple dance type of things. And we did throw in some mixers, and we did incorporate round dance steps with our squares. And this was in the mid-1900s, of course, in the 40s and 1940s and 50s, and that's not really too long ago. The coming of rounds, I feel, has reached a point where right now we are on a sort of a threshold. I get reports all over the country that from many, many people that square dancing is in trouble. New England is one of these areas. People are wondering where it's going. Square dance population has decreased, or at least they're not showing up at dances. People are wondering what's happened. On the other hand, the round dancing in New England has gained, and it's becoming stronger and stronger. I think if those of you who go to festivals or conventions or weekends notice the difference. The round dance floor is full, and much fuller than it was 10 years ago or 5 years ago. So there's a gaining in population of the round dance community. There's gaining in popularity of becoming a round dancer. And we haven't really even tried as square dance callers to promote this. The Round Dance Cure and the coming of the round dance specialist has done this. But in some part, it falls back onto the early background and what some of us have always felt was good practice of including rounds in our square dance program. Now, I feel that the level system that we have gone into kind of eliminates rounds at the challenge level. When you get up into challenge, there's not very many people interested in rounds. Don't you find that? In fact, or promenades, or do-si-dos, or much anything else. Right. Or don't touch me because you might push me the wrong way.
Or smiling.
Don't smile at me, no, please. But we're not really concerned with the challenge level. If that's what those people want, of course, they're entitled and they have their own program. Mostly, I think most of us are interested in our mainstream and our plus programs, and perhaps A1 into a slight advanced. This is the area where most of us spend our time and where most of the square dance population is now currently dancing. Am I in agreement on that? Does everybody feel pretty much that way? Good. I feel that in this area, this is where round dance and round dancing is very important. As you know, most dances at club dances and whatnot are running rounds in between the squares. And I'm just going to throw out another question here. How many people here are square dance callers or a wife of a square dance caller? Very good. Great. How many of you have rounds as part of your square dance program? Very good. How many of you run more or less a 2-and-2 program? Sometimes. How many 2 and 1? One round in between instead of 2. Okay, very good. How many of you already teach rounds in your, say, beginner square dance class as part of your program? Good. Yeah. Well, not rounds as such, or basic round dance movements, let's put it this way. Mixers, something that falls in the round dance category. Now, how many use mixers, let's say, use two-steps and things like that rather than just walking or dancing like you would in square dance, shuffling? Good. Well, I think we're talking to the right people then, and I'm not sure we have to convince you that, that rounds are good for the square dance program. But one of my points is going to be that in order for us to have a good round dance program at plus level in square dancing or A1 or mainstream, that it's got to start somewhere, and I feel that that somewhere is probably in the beginner class. Subsequently, Bob and Herb will be talking to you about the value of rounds in the square dance class, why we should do it, why we should encourage our dancers to participate, and why that it's good for the square dance activity in its whole. I feel that if you do incorporate rounds in your beginner class, and for those of you who might not be using them, I feel you could look toward this as a possibility of gaining a little bit more solidarity with your program, gaining some prestige and more respect. And one of the biggest problems I feel that you might have is finding the time to do it. We're crowded with the list. Basic 48 movements in our basic program, kind of tough to get it in the time allowed. For clubs who are dancing at mainstream, teach me a class, graduate them by April or May, and make sure they know all the mainstream movements. Pretty tough to start to teach some rounds in there. However, we hope to be able to show you a way that we can get a few round dance basics under their belts along with this program, and I'm suggesting that possibly taking maybe 10 minutes, either before your program or after your square dance teaching program or during, somewhere, 10 minutes a night, concentrating on what might be construed to be round dance basics in the form of mixers maybe, or the use of some of these things to get people geared up a little bit so that easy rounds sooner or later are not absolutely strange to them, and they don't all of a sudden graduate from square dance class never having seen a round or never having been subjected to anything of this nature, all of a sudden going to a square dance club and here half the crowd gets up and does rounds and they've never seen them before. I feel maybe it's the duty and obligation of the square dance caller to kind of set the stage for this if you feel that rounds are important to your program at a later stage when dancers graduate and get out into the square dance community. I'm going to call on Herb Egender first to talk a little bit, and at any time we want your cooperation and your input. If you have questions, if you have comments, if you have something to add, we would like that, because we haven't solved all the problems. We know that. And perhaps you've solved a problem that we have not been able to solve as pertains to rounds, how we fit it in, and the best way to do it, the best way to teach, and the best way to gain knowledge not only to ourselves, but give our knowledge to our new people or our dancers. So with this in mind, we hope you'll participate. We'll have time for questions and answers at the end of the session. And also in your handout, there's one other item that was suggested a year or so ago by Jim Mork in an article that came out in Jim Hilton's bulletin that we don't have to read now, but we will, if time allows, get into that. I'd like some of your feelings on that and some input as to how you think it might work. So this is our program for the next hour. At this time, I'd like to turn the mic over to Herb Egender.
Thank you, Al. I'm sorry Erna can't be down here with us. She's certainly half of our round dance team, maybe more. But she's doing a session upstairs, so that couldn't be avoided. As I looked around the room when everyone got seated, I suspected something, and Al's straw vote or poll certainly confirmed that we have the preachers preaching to the preachers. And you're all lovely people, and I think you're great, and I'm sure that I can learn a great deal from you. But if I could kick you all out and replace you with callers who didn't like rounds, I'd like to do that. Because I think this is where we have to make some inroads. We have so many callers who are afraid of rounds, and I think with good reason, and I'll mention that a bit later on. I certainly agree with Al, probably because we grew up with the same atmosphere, that rounds are a part of square dancing. I hope that never changes. I'm always disturbed when I go to a national or someplace and the round dance hall is 2 miles down the road on a wooden floor away from the square dancers on the cement floor and so forth. I think they are a part of the same program. They always have been. And I think Al and I grew up in a time when you didn't ask, are there going to be rounds at the dance? You didn't ask because square dancing was included round dancing. And if you went to a dance, you knew they were going to do the Rye Waltz and the Varsuviana and the Schottisch, and they were just taken for granted. Incidentally, Pappy also wrote a round dance book. His most famous book is Cowboy Dances, published in 1939, but he also wrote a round dance book, which is a terrific reference if you don't have it. Let me say this. I am very strongly pro-rounds, very much involved in them, and I'm very strongly using rounds and contras in a square dance class for a number of good reasons. However, I hear callers say, I do not have time to teach rounds in square dance class, and I say, you're right, I agree. Now that sounds like two statements in conflict, so let me clarify. Yes, I think rounds and contras both should be used in square dance class. I think callers that do not use these two parts of the square dance program are overlooking two valuable tools. And they have an incomplete toolbox, because with both rounds and contras, we can teach a lot of the things that we want to accomplish in square dancing, such as body posture, timing, phrasing, dancing smoothly, hand positions, courtesy, a lot of things that we can teach using using rounds and contras that apply to our square dance program. I find that round dancers, by and large, are much better square dancers. One of my standing requests at National Square Dance Conventions, if I get to call, is that I get to call in a round dance hall for round dancers, because they're such nice square dancers. So that we can accomplish a lot of things by using these two additional valuable tools in our classes. And yet, I do say, when callers say, I just don't have time to teach rounds, I agree with them. Both squares and rounds have taken parallel tracks toward complexity over the last many years, and you are well aware of that. And for that reason, we have a lot of levels in square dancing. We have a lot of levels, a word I don't like, plateaus, I guess, in round dancing. And as we move from one plateau to the other in both elements of that picture, the squares and rounds become more and more separated. And callers who are not experienced in rounds see this increasing complexity, and they see this separation, and they say to themselves, well, I'm involved in squares, and they're getting separated anyhow. I don't want to become involved in rounds. And besides, it's much too complex, and I simply don't have time either to learn how to do rounds or to use them in my class. I have 68 basics in the mainstream program to teach, and CALLERLAB wants me to do that in 41 weeks. My club will only allow me whatever they will allow, and I can hardly cover the mainstream program in my class, and therefore I simply don't have time to mess with rounds. And I think an individual that does that, again, is overlooking a valuable tool. If we could convince people like that rounds could contribute to his program in helping accomplish what he wants to in square dancing, I think we might make some converts. Now, I feel about round dancing the same way I feel about square dancing. If we're going to do it, let's do it properly and let's do it well. And I won't ask the square dance callers in the audience if they teach their square dance classes by having their class members go home and memorize singing calls, because I have never run into a caller that taught that way. Most callers teach people how to do a do-sa-do and an Alaman left and a right and left grand, and et cetera, et cetera. And I see some heads shaking, and I presume that's generally true. I therefore wonder why we would expect callers in their classes to teach people round dance routines without teaching basics. And particularly, we used to be able to get away with this. And in publications and other recommendations you will read, you'll see lists of dances that they recommend that you teach in your square dance class, and they include such things as Frenchy Brown, et cetera, et cetera. And maybe you can do it, but if a person is going to do Frenchy Brown properly, then he ought to know what a forward two-step is, and what a hitch six is, and what a box is, and so forth. And before you teach him Frenchy Brown, I contend that you ought to teach him those basics. so that if you want to put those basics together differently in some other place, he'll know what they are, just as if you want to put an Alaman left and right and left grand together in different places, he'll know what they are. And I'm saying that I don't think callers really have time to teach well a lot of round dance basics. And therefore, we shouldn't ask them to teach poorly a bunch of round dance routines. Now, this doesn't mean that they can't use rounds in their square dance class, because there, as you all well know, there is a long, long list of those things that I would call rounds which are available, which can do a lot of things for us. Thinking about everywhere mixer. Walk 4, side close twice, walk 4, side close twice, make a right hand star, back away, and come forward and do-sa-do with a new girl, and on you go. And with that little mixer, you can teach a lot of things. Moving to the music, shuffle step, posture, hand holds, do-sa-do practice, star practice, and yet you don't have to teach a whole lot of routine. It's a walking kind of thing. We have mixers such as Good Old Day Mixer that can provide your class with a lot of variety and a lot of fun. Classes like to relax once in a while, too. And why not give them something that they can have fun with and relax and be foolish with, such as the Good Old Days Mixer. So I'm saying there are a lot of these things that are available. I think we should use them in our square dance class. And these are the kinds of rounds that I would advocate using to introduce people to a feeling of what round dancing is while they are still in square dance class. I'm simply saying I don't think we have time to teach you a bunch of routines. We say in square dancing, and our callers that have ever been through a caller's school know the old admonition of KISS, KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. And I think that certainly applies to using rounds in square dance class. So I would say KISS and do it well. And I'll be glad to answer any questions or exchange any ideas, having exposed my biases.
Thank you, Herb. We'd like to get some input going from you at this point before I turn it over to Bob. Herb, have you figured out a way in our limited time frame that we have to teach all the square dance list how we really put the rounds in there? How do we do it? Is it by use of mixers, primarily at first? And how do we ever get around to doing Frenchy Brown, for instance, and by the time the class is over?
We all say Frenchy Brown because for some reason Frenchy Brown in square dance classes seems to have become some kind of a tradition. I think it's maybe a tradition that it's time to change.
Excuse me. Is this being picked up on the tape from that other mic? Okay, we do have two mics working.
I think in every kind of class, be it square dancing, round dancing, or whatever it is, if you reach a point, if you know anything about the principles of learning, principles of education, you reach a point where you can no longer cram any more information into people's heads. And there are times in any kind of a class where you have to just back off and kind of float and practice, relax, have fun, and so forth. And I think these are the times in a class where you need to use mixers, where you need to do some fun things, where you need to sit people down and talk to them about dress, tradition, etc. All of these other subjects quite often do not get covered. And while we say there just is not time to do these things in square dance class, if we use time that already should be blocked out for other kinds of things besides learning new basics, there really is time for some mixers and so forth. I don't think there's time to teach people all of the round dance basics so that they can do a bunch of routines. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you, Herb. We have a hand up. When you rise, would you please state your name and your state?
Dr. Carroll from Legacy, but also a round dance teacher. One of your coining simpler than Frenchy Brown is let's put it 1 second. I think any...
Excuse me. Doc, I'm sorry. We're taping this session, and we're going to ask you to come up and take the hand mic. Repeat your name, please, if you will, so that it'll go on tape. Otherwise, we're having a long stretch of blanks.
Dr. Carroll from Legacy and also a round dance teacher.
I think, is a very good dance to use, and I think practically any caller who has done it would be able to teach it. It could even be the last couple of measures that have a little bit of complication of body turns could even be modified so that they minimize those body turns and make it easy at the beginning, and eventually, as the dancers get used to it, they can be introduced.
Thank you, Doc. Do we have any other suggestions for perhaps easy dances that could be learned easy? Certainly the left foot is one step is, as it says, it's a one step, and what we need to do is to be able to count to 4. It kind of teaches the dancer phrasing and counting, which is a big help later in smoother square dancing, of course.
Ted points out that, in fact, in left foot is one step, there are 12 basic steps, including sidecar and banjo positions, which are difficult for some dancers. I love it. It's a classic, and I use it all the time in round dance classes. I'm not sure how many callers, but we as round dance people tend to say, oh boy, hit sixes. Anybody can do a hit six. I'll guarantee you anybody can't do a hit six. And what I'm more interested in and would like to hear, and Al, excuse me, I don't mean to
Go right ahead.
We can sit here all day and list our favorite dances, and I'd like to hear what yours are. However, I'm more interested in the philosophy. I think that those of us that are involved in rounds have to kind of agree on a philosophy that are we going to continue to tell callers you need to teach rounds in your square dance class, and then guys seeing the complexity of the round dance movement and all that they've got to do in square dancing are going to continue to put their tail between their legs and run? Or can we agree upon a philosophy or argue about a philosophy that says, hey, let's back off and say, guys, we're not really telling that you need to teach a whole bunch of dances, quotation marks, that have titles, but you can introduce your people to the feeling of basic round dancing while you're accomplishing square dance objectives. So I'd like to hear more of your philosophy than lists of dances.
Would you take the mic, please?
I'm Jean Brody from Northern New Jersey, and very new at this whole thing. This is our first call at the convention. My husband's a square dance caller, and until about a year and a half ago, we didn't want anything to do with rounds. They seemed, we learned a couple real easy ones, and to do the same thing over and over again just didn't appeal to us. And somehow I got interested in cueing, and probably did it very unorthodoxly, and didn't take round dance lessons or anything, but I'm now sort of cueing. And I think maybe part of the problem is when you say put rounds in your square dance program, square dance callers panic. What do they know about rounds? I think if you left out the rounds and said mixers, which is basically what you're talking about here, you might get a little bit further. Because I think a lot of square dance callers probably do mixers at one-nighters. And so they're familiar with mixers, whereas rounds, to me, even as I came in here, to me, rounds were two people getting up and doing a dance. And I wonder how many square dance callers really, that's what they think of as rounds, and that there isn't time for them. Whereas mixers, I think there is, and I think that is the place it's necessary.
I think you have a really good point there, and we might give that some consideration. In effect, we do start with mixers in our rounds, and I think that's a good logical place to start, but soon it does go into rounds. We just throw mixers into the round dance category as an overall category, as we do squares. We throw all levels in the square dance category under the terminology of square dancing. But perhaps if we did change that, as you say, we would benefit in other square dance. Some square dance callers would not panic. May I also suggest this, and I'll get to your question, that we're interested, of course, in what is happening today and what is going to happen next year, but we're also interested in what's going to be happening 10 years from now or 8 years from now or 15 years from now. And bear in mind that the square dance caller of 10 years from now may be in your beginner class today, Okay? He's your new caller. This is where we get new callers. We don't get new callers from Main Street. We get them from the beginner class who have gone through the mainstream and on into it and all of a sudden get wrapped up into it. If this caller has learned nothing but square dancing, has had no round dance background as he's been learning, he certainly isn't going to take up round dancing when he gets involved in squares at the A1 level. He's an A1 dancer, let's say, and he wants to start now to call. The rounds are the furthest thing from his mind because he sees over 3,000 movements in Burleson's encyclopedia. He says all kinds of things in front of him, and he's got all kinds of problems of diction and mic techniques and choreography and things like that to learn. So rounds is way out. If he does have a little background in mixers and some simple rounds, then he is more apt to incorporate that in his program when he does become a caller and start to teach. I feel this is what we have to look for a future of, say, 10 years from now, when these newer callers come around, and then they start teaching their classes also. Then they're more susceptible to more willing to put the rounds into their programs. Now, we did have another hand, yes. Would you mind taking the mic?
From the Netherlands. I will speak to you in what we say English, not American. I hope you understand. We are in the Netherlands and we are in an outskirt. And we started out with rounds in the square dance class, or when the people were graduated. And the people get a kick out of it. And they were asking for more. So I will warn you, when you started in your class with rounds, easy rounds, be prepared that the people will ask you for more and that there is a following up. Because in our outskirt there was nothing. And that's why I started out with queuing, the same the lady was telling before. And now we have 90% of our square dancers are round dancers. But if there is no following up, please be sure before you start with round dancing, I think. And I think there are a lot of, will we say, rural areas here in the States who have no following up for that part of the activity.
This is true in many cases. We do have, as you probably know, many round dance cuers and people who are just coming into round dancing as cuers who really hadn't given it much thought up until a few years ago. Consequently, many times the square dancer will drift over into a round dance class, may then go back and take basics from a round dance person who specializes in rounds, may then join a round dance club, or if the cure has such a thing, may get into basic rounds and then enjoy more rounds at the square dance, not where the caller necessarily is the cuer, but where the round dance specialist comes in and cues, and then running the 2-and-2 program has that available to him. And there are two people on stage. One is the square dance caller, and one is the round dance cuer. And the round dance cuer takes over where the square dance caller feels he has to stop because of pressure of his talent and ability for one thing, and time on the other hand. It was very difficult to go into the higher levels of either one of these fields without a lot of time in preparation and promotion of it. Yes.
Bill Cooper from Toronto, Ontario. I have an idea here, and I stole it from Alan Lee a long time ago. Maybe he doesn't remember it, but one of the things I think that callers should endeavor to do is, instead of thinking always in terms of squares, I've always thought in terms of a tip of being a round formation or a circle formation, a pattern call and the singing call. In the round formation, you can teach a heck of a lot of square dance basics. You can also introduce your rounds from the circle. And this has been my forte, if you want to call it, for combining the two. And I've taught rounds as part of the square dance program from day one. And left footers is an excellent dance. I never teach the full thing. I use it as a mixer. The first two sequences, back away and side poses, and come back and together, and then go on to the other sequences and teach it about 6 weeks to do that full dance as mixers, and you won't get bored at it to do it. So there's just a couple of ideas I wanted to suggest, and maybe some of the callers don't use the circle for teaching purposes. There's so many things you can teach in the circle in square dance, and also use it as a circle formation, not going to be something new. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, we have more comments from the floor. Alice?
Alice Dorfman from Whitesboro, New York. I can't say I'm a new dancer. Been dancing a long time. My husband's been culling a long time. And I think that's where my problem comes. We love to round dance, and we have danced a long time. I would love to have started to cue rounds. It would have made me feel a little bit more part of things, but I felt very inhibited about it. My husband does an excellent job with teaching and cueing some of the basics in rounds, and that's probably why I felt more inhibited. But as you say, as a caller, he felt that he put more of his time and energies and effort into the calling part of it. And in class, we do mixers and so forth, but sometimes not. Sometimes he gets carried away and he doesn't really do it as often as I feel maybe it would be a good idea as a little release for the tension. We do patty cake polka, for instance, and boy, they love that. I think maybe if we do a little bit more fun type things in class of that sort. I do agree, we taught left footers and they do it, and they get it very well, and he's excellent at that. But I think if I could have learned how to cue, it would have taken some of the tension off from him. And for years, I wanted to go someplace to learn how to cue rounds, so that I'd have more confidence in myself. I must say, I did try quite a number of years back when our children were small, and we did try it at a club, like workshop type of dance. And everybody seemed to enjoy it, except one of the officers came up and said, "That's very nice, Alice, but don't do it again." So that took away my incentive for it. Probably if that hadn't happened, I would have gone on to, I still would. I know Manning and Anita Smith had a class for teaching beginning round dance teachers for a couple of years. I don't know, I haven't heard of it lately. But just was unfortunate with all of our commitments and so forth. I was never able to get down to, I think it was in Tennessee. They had. So that's what I would be interested in. And maybe some of the callers would like to cue who feel a little bit self-conscious about it, either they don't feel confident enough in their dancing and so forth. They might even be interested in taking a basic class and learning how to cue rounds and how to get people started with rounds. Years and years ago, we went to a national, and Manny and Nita started. I guess they thought all round dance teachers were going to come and dance at the beginning rounds, and all these people came, and they were amazed. The room was full of people who wanted to learn how to round dance who didn't have the opportunity in their own area. So I think you have schools for square dance callers. I think it would be nice to have some schools for people who already maybe know basics and rounds but would like to learn how to properly cue. And that's another thing. If we have a good cuer, we can dance most of the rounds. But if it's not a good cuer, we don't do so.
Thank you, Alice. We have some more questions. Just to add a little bit to what Alice has said, however, there are some schools now for round dance instructors, or to get you into good teaching habits and rounds and how to cue and things like that. I'm not sure if Manning and Nita still have that school. Did you know, Herb? I haven't heard of it lately.
They had to cancel last year, and
Yeah.
decided they can't continue.
I thought that may be the case, but there are some. We had hoped Irv and Betty Easterday would be here at the session this morning, but I don't think they've made the convention at all. I haven't seen them when their name's been announced. So,
Incidentally, you're talking education, and of course we have, we don't have Don, but we have Pete Hickman here from CALLERLAB, and Don and Pete are head of the education committee for CALLERLAB, and you may want to talk to her later on about schools and so forth.
We certainly-
If I could do that, but I'm going to signal on you.
we'd certainly like to hear from the CALLERLAB people, and with any suggestions that they might have as to how we as square dance callers or callers partners could stimulate more interest and become more knowledgeable, and what's the easy way to learn. Time-wise, money-wise, it's tough to go all the way to Texas or California or someplace like that when you live on the East Coast and spend your time at that when it just doesn't seem to fit in. Now, we have had several hands, and let's start over here. All right, I haven't forgotten you. Okay. And then Buck in the back, I haven't forgotten you.
My name's Wayne Nicholson from Montgomery, Alabama, and I've been listening to these comments, and circle left. You go to round dance class and teach you to box. So I got interested in this, and I think what we're trying to do here is how we can use round dance and maybe not to teach a full round dance program or stuff while we're teaching square dance basics, but to get an interest built up here that when they do get through, that we've got them coming into the round dance program also. That's the way I look at it. I try to use the first, second, and third night, I'll use bingo waltz from a big circle in my class to get them used to this type of thing. I use, GKW mixer, white silver sands, and go on and on and on. The name of these clap happy, what have you. I try to create an interest in my round dance, square dance class. Just give them enough along that they will have an interest when they get through square dance class going to the rounds. I also teach a full round dance program and round dance club. And the two complement each other, and we've got to have, I think, we've got to have both of them. And again, somebody said teaching squares from a circle. I do this too. And also a good little figure to use contra-wise is marching to Petroleum from the circle. But it's there. It's unlimited. We just got to get down and dig and do it.
Thank you. Part of our program is going to perhaps give you some help along the lines of stimulating interest and getting a foothold on this with beginner class. We have a couple of hands in the air, but then, and I hope we get more response from you, but I did want to get into this section of the program with the Fryes. But we'll take you now since your hand was up, and also Buck, and then we'll go on with our program. We'll come back to you.
Shelley Lee, Hamilton, Ontario, but I'm also from the Toronto area of Bill Cooper. And what he didn't tell you is that we have a little bit of heaven up in Canada. We have 99% of our square dance clubs do rounds. And most of the callers, YSQ, our Toronto District Square Dance Association, has the rounds with the callers. It all sounds good, doesn't it? And the round dance leaders come in, they help the callers learn these square dance rounds. All of us teach white silver sands and left footers basically. I personally get into teaching hash round dance basics so that I work towards sweet talk at the end of the year. And the Toronto District Callers Association also always introduces a round dance program at the caller session, the teaching, the leader week or whatever they have. And we also have a round dance special session for any college wives who want to come and learn. The little horror story to this was that we have a lot of URDC and CALLERLAB leaders who told me to my face at the meeting that callers and their wives should not be teaching square dance rounds. They should go back and work at CALLERLAB.
Part of the question that I was going to throw out to you later is somewhat in that vein, in that if the square dance caller gets more and more involved with rounds, does he alienate then the feelings of the round dance leader in the area? And is there going to be conflict? And if so, how are we going to avoid this? And can there be some way to cooperate and to work together on the thing? Because certainly that's what we want to do. I won't ask the question now, but you can be mulling it around, and perhaps the CALLERLAB people and the legacy people might be able to shed some light on that. Buck, you had your hand up, and then we're going to get on to Bob.
I think Herb was right when we're all in agreement here, and I think Edie and I have done practically everything that everyone imagined. But Herb was also talking about a little bit of philosophy and what we should do. And one of the ideas that I'd like to throw out to you, and it would require work in the future, is, and also maybe tinge on this, would there be any conflict between round dance cuers and square dance callers interfering in a round dance program or something like that? But I do like to teach rounds in my class, and I was hoping that someplace along the line there would be some place that I would fit into in this respect. We have lists for basic dancing, we have a list for mainstream, and goes on up. Why couldn't we create what we would call, and I know you all know them, but it's nice to see it written down on paper sometime, it might be inspirational, if there would be a list of basic round dance steps, not dances, that a caller could or should teach during his square dance lessons. In other words, if we have an objective of going through 1 to 48 or 1 to 68 or anything like that planned ahead of us, anytime you want to get someplace, you got to set a goal. So if we had a goal of, I'm going to throw a figure out there, of 20, not dances, steps, that we would say and print through CALLERLAB or something like that, and say, we recommend you to go through these 20 steps. And hopefully the callers that do not agree too much with us might get the idea that, well, gee whiz, that's something, maybe I can accomplish that. Even if he doesn't want to learn a lot of dances. I mean, I usually try to, after I teach 2 or 3 steps, try to put them into a little thing like the left footers or Frye or some of the mixers and things like that. But I was hoping that we could throw out something to people other than the people that are in complete agreement with us, and set a goal for them by creating a basic round dance step list and recommending that it be taught during square dance classes. Maybe somebody would just latch onto the idea, and if it was thought about, maybe committee worked on it or something like that, we could come out with something and print it along with basic list, mainstream list, this, that, and more or less put it right into the square dance picture by printing it right along with the basic list. If a man doesn't want to do it, you can't make him do it. But if you give him a suggestion, if you dangle it out in front of him, hopefully some might take the carrot and decide that they were going to do it. So I was just hoping that something, again, thinking about philosophy of what to do with people that might not be in agreement, that this might be something that we could work on as a committee or something like that and provide.
Thank you, Buck. Herb, I'm going to ask you to use this other mic, and everyone else, because we're just not picking up too well on the tape from the other mic. But I think Herb can shed some light on that, Buck, and this may please you.
We sometimes forget that we do have new people with us, and I think it would be well in terms of what we CALLERLAB have done in the past on round dancing, and this is old hat to some of you. In 1978, we passed this resolution. Whereas many callers desire and need guidance and assistance in introducing rounds into their square dance program, and whereas suggested levels of round dance steps have been developed through research and discussions of committees of both CALLERLAB and RoundaLab, be it therefore resolved that CALLERLAB adopt a program of helping callers introduce rounds into their dancing programs through use of most frequently used basic steps and movements, rhythms, and routines of square dance rounds, recommended steps and levels to be published in the next issue of Direction. Be it further resolved that the CALLERLAB Round Dance Committee establish continuing liaison with RoundaLab and review and update annually the levels and steps established by the CALLERLAB Round Dance Committee. As a result of that resolution, RoundaLab did do some preliminary work on developing what we had asked them to develop. In 1980, the following resolution was passed, whereas the 1978 CALLERLAB Convention passed a resolution adopting a program of helping callers introduce rounds into their dancing programs, and whereas RoundaLab, at the request of and for the use of CALLERLAB, has developed suggested phases of terms, steps, and rhythms for that purpose, be it therefore resolved that CALLERLAB endorse and adopt the RoundaLab developed standards of Phase 1 and Phase 2 of round dancing for the use of square dance callers who want to introduce rounds into their dancing programs, and that CALLERLAB include in its educational plan provisions for familiarizing callers with the adopted standards of Phases 1 and 2. Be it further resolved that CALLERLAB formally express its appreciation to RoundaLab for the development of Phase 1 and Phase 2, and request RoundaLab to develop a suggested teaching progression together with suggested routines and or dances for which clearly understandable cue sheets and records are available. Those are the two resolutions that have been passed by CALLERLAB, and they've been passed on to RoundaLab. RoundaLab has done quite a bit of work on this. Unfortunately, something happened in RoundaLab about a year or two ago where the phases kind of got scrambled, and suddenly we found in Phase 1 and Phase 2, the very early phases of round dancing, such things as the back whisk and the turning hover and so forth. And many of us, when we got those lists, said, "Gee, what happened?" And nobody's quite sure. But I assure you now that Round the Lab has the phase program well in hand. There is an extremely good working document out on the phases of round dancing, and hopefully out of that will come the phase 1 and phase 2 that we originally were looking for. And I'm optimistic now that the Round the Lab work is back on track. So I think Buck, a part of what you were talking about, which is certainly good, is in progress with the cooperation of Round the Lab. But I thought everybody ought to be aware of those 2 resolutions that have been passed. Just as an aside, let me say this, that at the Round Dance Committee meeting, and I hope a lot of you will come, we will have the important job of finding a chairman for this committee. You know, Manning Smith started this whole cotton picking thing off and then bailed out. And for about the last 3 or 4 years, for one reason or another, I have found myself kind of bird dogging the Round Dance Committee. And since I have a job with the organization, I really shouldn't be doing that. And we really need a chairman for the Round Dance Committee. And boy, I see a lot of good ones out there. So please come to that committee meeting and let's elect a chairman that can do a lot of the things that you're all talking about.
When is that meeting, Herb?
3:30 this afternoon, I think. Mm-hmm.
I certainly support Herb's idea and hope you all do go, and hope that some of you will entertain the idea of getting more involved so that we can put more teeth into this program and to actually get something done about it. Yes, question? Would you like the mic? All right, since you smiled at me so sweetly, one more time, then I'm going to turn it over to Bob Frye so that we can continue.
Thank you. I'm Mary Turner from Ottawa, Ontario. My husband is the caller, and I cue some of the rounds anyway. I'm getting a little confused here as to whether we're talking solely about introducing rounds in beginner classes, or whether you're talking about with a more established square dance club where possibly there aren't round dance groups in the area and the caller is thinking of introducing a round dance basic program, say, for an hour ahead of the main evening. For that, I can see Round the Lab's involvement, but our own experience has been, and we have tried teaching basic round dance movements to our beginner class, that really the only thing that there is time for is to stick solely to the mixes of the type of white silver sands. Otherwise, people do tend to get frustrated, and I know that in many cases the women of the partnership have persuaded their husbands to come and learn to square dance because there isn't any fancy footwork involved. And then if they are suddenly in a situation where they have to learn even a basic forward two-step can be very difficult for somebody who has 2 left feet, they tend to get rather uptight about it. And I felt that in many cases the men were participating just to please me rather than to please themselves and not to get into any confrontation with their wives. So I would just like to say that I feel that really in a basic class for learning square dance basics, you should stick to round dance mixes solely and not get beyond that at all. Thank you.
Thank you. We like this kind of input. I feel it's important, and it gives us all some ideas upon which to base our own programs at home and something to think about. Certainly what you say has a lot of merit, and we found that also true. I'm going to move on with our program because the Fryes have conducted rounds along with the square dance program for many, many years, and I'd like Bob to tell you the success and what they've found in their program and what his approach is, and to show you a few things. And I think we do have a turntable, Bob, if you'd like to use it. Bob Frye.
Thank you very much. In answer to Buck's question back there, Doc Terrell will remember when we worked on, I went to my first Round the Lab meeting. I come down the lobby one day about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the Round the Lab chairman grabbed me and he says, "Here, you write phase 1, 2, and 3, and 4 of it." And we were involved all afternoon, and Doc and I and his wife and my wife, we missed the dinner, so we was going out to have this thing printed up, and then 2 years later, I didn't recognize the thing that was in there. But I don't have that much time, so I want to get on. I'm more or less the show and tell. I want to tell you about my problem, or about our things. I have just completed a 10-week, 2-hour each day round dance class. I teach basics. I don't teach routines. We taught 66 basics. At the end of 10 weeks, they danced 37 songs and danced them very well. But as I say, I'm here to show and tell. Somebody says, how do we get started? What do we do? We teach Frenchy Brown or we teach left footers one step. My God, have you ever taken a look at the notice that you got 12 basic steps to teach when you teach left footers run step? I'm a little show and tell. Can I have a round dance couple up here? One couple. Would you put the record on her for you? I want to show you how we just start out here. Any man and any lady, we want to show you real easy how to get into this thing. Don't be bashful. One man and one lady. Boy, I wish I had somebody that didn't know how to round dance at all, because in my class, I have them round dancing in about 3 minutes' time. Now, here's how we do it. Don't put the music on just yet. Al, just turn and face B. Turn in and face her. That's why I say, gentlemen, turn and face the girl in the wall. Hold both her hands. Turn and hold both her hands. Going to the man's left and the lady's right, do nothing but a side close. Go. Side close. Do it one more time. Side close. You don't have any trouble teaching people that. They can do that. And they say, guys, the next time I'm going to say side close and gentlemen step forward. Don't even mention what the lady's going to do, and watch what happens. Side close and step forward. Go. Side close, step forward. You realize what you got in half a minute's time? You got half of a box. Then you can say, okay, guys, the next time, if you can go to the left, it just stands to reason we can go to the right. But when you go to the right, guys, you do a side close and step back. Okay, do it. Go to the right. Side, close, step back. You got a box, half a minute's time. Then move out just a little ways, Al, down here. Then say, guys and girls, looking down the line of dance, do nothing but a side close and a side touch. Do that. Side close, side touch. Go reverse line. Side close, side touch. Recognize you're getting a little routine there. And then just for things, say, back away 3 steps and clap your hands. Go 1, 2, 3, clap. Together, 2, 3, clap. And then look down the line of dance and strut 4 and shake everything you got. You got a round dance routine. Now let me show you how that works. Put the music on. Yeah, go that way, okay. Now I don't teach the introduction at this point there. We're going to start with the box. No, wait a minute. You're all waiting for an introduction. I'm not doing this with the class. So put it back on again one more, Herb. All I'm going to see is side close forward and side close back. Just let them see how this beginning routine. Side close forward and do it back. Side close, side touches both ways. Back away 3 and clap your hands. Together 3. Strut 4. Realize what you got? 2 minutes time, you got them dancing. Now let me show you how to do the 2-step. Just put that off just a second there. I switch music. I vary the music. Al, back all the way up there. Hold her hand, the inside hand. I'm going to say, gentlemen, start with the left foot. Ladies, start with the right foot. Do nothing but walk forward 6 steps. But don't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Go 1, 2, 3, and a 4, 5, 6. Okay, Al, walk forward 6. Go 1, 2, 3, and a 4, 5, 6. I do that twice, and they got it. You realize what they got? They got a 2-step in there without teaching it. Okay, I'll back up there and just, now I ain't going to say this. This is how I handle my class there. Start this out there, and I'll give you the introduction. We'll use this music. You're used to introduction. Step apart and point. Go together, open position and touch. Walk 6. Blend in, face the wall, side close forward and back. Side close, side touch both ways. Strut 4. 2 minutes time, you have them dancing. You don't have to worry with that frustration of left footers 1 steps that's got 12 basic steps. You take and build from there. I have here, I teach 66 basic steps. I don't teach routines. I teach steps. They know them. Consequently, I can call anything and they can dance this thing. Also, the first night, I teach a waltz, and I want to show you how easy it is to do that. Herb, can we switch records? I'm trying to hurry on here.
Take your time, Bob.
Okay. Herb, hit for Lonesome Waltz, hit the cue side on that. I want you to hear what the cue size is, and then I want to show you how I use it for just as a beginner's waltz to teach the people. It's so beautiful that you can do that. You might want to up the phone.
Can I ask you a question?
Surely.
I'll do it on the mic. Excuse me a minute. Could you bring your voice down a bit? You're booming right straight.
Oh, okay, yeah, we can do that. No problem.
Yeah. I think that kind of thing is really great. But I want to ask a question for my own education. I find in teaching rounds that the things that cause the most difficulty are two very basic things for people to get in their heads, and that's touch and close. And they're not steps at all, because it's those two things which determine whether people are on the correct foot or not. When you use this kind of thing with people who have not done anything, and Al is certainly a lousy example because he's only been doing this for 100 years. I'm sorry, Al, 95. Do you have trouble with those brand new people when you say side close, side touch? Do you have trouble with them doing them? 2 side closes. Okay, I just want to ask, if you do have that trouble, and if so, how do you get around it?
Okay, here's how I get around it. My wife works. She does not go with me to teach. I don't demonstrate. I do all by talking. I can show in 2 minutes' time. A lot of us people don't give credit to the people who's taken class for the intelligence that they have. If you notice when I showed the box, I just said side close, step forward. I didn't tell the lady what to do. She knows what to do. Automatically she follows. But I stand on the stage and I say side close, side touch. All your weight's on your left foot, gentlemen. Your toucher, you're going to use it, you're going to go back. A little gimmick. You know, what you got to do is give the people credit for the intelligence that they got. The least amount of teaching you can do, the better dancers you're going to go. No, I don't have that trouble because I explain it right off the bat and have them doing that. Sure, you can get a couple clods going like that, but you're always going to get clods in your round dance and your square dance class that can't dance at all, so you got to kind of ignore them and go on to the other people. But if you explain that thing easy, side close, side touch, no weight on your toucher, and you do that beginning, and it goes real good. I hope that answered your question, but just play the cues side. I want them to hear what the waltz really sounds like, but don't be afraid to be innovative with these records like the square dance callers do with their patter record. Watch this. Just listen to a few things, and I'm going to show you what we put to it to begin on beginners. Then I'm going to show you a little, speed it up just a little bit. The halfway point, that's one of those Belco things. Hit it halfway and it's got the cued side on it. Yeah, I want them to hear the cues, and I want them to see what I've done with it.
Give it 3 to semi, 3 face close to butterfly, bounce left and right, twirl line, and through face close.
Okay, that's enough. Take it back. Now, I show a waltz, the first lesson that I do with, which is necessary. Waltz away, 2, 3, together, 2, 3. You don't have any trouble. You're progressing down the line of the dance. Then I say step forward and swing, face and touch. Easy cues, but you get them doing waltz steps. Put the music on, and we're going to get you together to butterfly, and we'll show you how we use this. The first night I have them doing waltzes. Step apart and point, butterfly and touch. Now waltz away, waltz together. Step forward and swing, face her and touch. Waltz away again, waltz together again. Step forward and swing, face her and touch. Now here's part B. Balance left and right. Nothing to it. Side draw close very slow. Balance left and right. And side claws draw very slow. Okay, that does that. What I'm trying to do is show and tell. If you guys want the name of these records, I've got them all up here. I've got the basic list that I go through down there. One other thing, just to inject. Yes, honey? No, I'm showing I'm showing the how to go if you guys want to expand your round dance teaching. I also, when I start my square dance clubs, also I take 20 minutes out of every square dance club to teach a round or something. I start with these basics and I build to that. Second night I have them doing this. It is not impossible. Everything in this world is possible if you think positive. If you say you can't do it, you're not going to do it. But if you talk it out and do it right there, it can be done. You go in with positive thinkings, and it can be done, really. One other thing I do, trying to hurry on in here, I teach a little Charleston step with the old boy figure. You know Charleston? Step forward, point forward, back, and B knows that. Look at her do. If you just put this on right here, I'll show you how we do this. Slow the speed down a little bit on this one, though. Alan B. and ourselves are getting old, but these can be. By the end of my square dance lessons, I have my people dance about 5 or 10, but then one for them and one for me, because then I get them into my round dance club. But we make it. Watch this from the open position, no intro. Now watch this. Charleston, go. Side close, side touches both ways. Strut 4. Charleston again. Side close, side touch both ways. Strut 4 to semi. 2 forward 2s. Face into the box. Double scissors banjo. 2 turning 2 steps. Okay, that's just enough to show you, but you can have them doing those things really if you have faith and if you take the time to go down there and give your people credit for the intelligence that they have out on the floor, and it's going to wind up fantastic. Give you a little bit about my round dance thing. I also have 3 square dance clubs, 3 round dance clubs. One of my largest round dance clubs is Friday morning from 9 to 12. We'll dance from 30 to 40 couples. I got a lot of retired people down there, so we go easy to intermediate, but we do all. And I was forced into this because I heard somebody say something about the tippy toes. That's exactly what I thought. But I was forced into it. Now I get booked to call the squares in the dance. I go $75 for the squares, another $25 to call the rounds, and there's money in there, believe it or not, and that's the name of the game in there. But at the same time, I make it easy. I'm dealing with retired people. So if you notice some of the music I got, some of you go back up there and see some of them things, but it gets on the floor. You program your rounds the same way you do your squares. I have a list because Round the Lab didn't come out with them, and I needed one immediately. And I follow these 66 basic steps religiously, and it'll show you the step marks and the dances and things they've got. I know we're getting along about noontime. We've got to get out of here. But if any of you would like to see me, I'll be here till tomorrow morning, and you can copy my list. Or anything I can help you, drop me a line. We'll be happy to. I'm sorry I didn't have too much time, but thank you, Al.
Thank you very much, Bob. I'm sorry we are running out of time. That seems to be one of the problems of all of our sessions here at CALLERLAB, that time is a really problem. And let me just check my watch. You're right, we are getting on, but we do have a few more minutes. Yes, I'll take comments. You certainly may. Please come to the mic.
I'm Pete Hickman, and we are the Round the Lab representatives here, and I'd like to thank CALLERLAB for inviting us. Al made a statement that I think is very important to the future of the square and round dance movement together. Don and I have always believed, and always will, that they must go together, and all of our round dancers square dance, and if they don't, they are square dancers the next 2 years. So I think the statement that he made, that you... the people, the ones of us that are older in the movement, that have been in it a long time, have this feeling. The new people do not, and for a lot of reasons. And I think if CALLERLAB and Round-a-Lab don't do a lot of communications, they are going to be separated, because there is a movement toward that, as we know. And I think all of you and you wives, I really salute you that Q must remember this, and as you come to CALLERLAB, and I certainly will remember at Round-a-Lab, that we must have more communication with each other as an organization. And I hope that you will promote that, and I'm sure you will. But I was disappointed there wasn't more people here, because I was hoping to have more advantages of talking to a lot of people who have their ideas about how round dancing should be, and you already believe it should be together. So let's be sure that we do not let our movement fall apart, and that we do keep together, because we have the same problem that you have with round dance teachers, with callers who do not like round dancing. They do not want us around. I've been pushed off the floor from round dancing. But those things happen. Let's not assume that Round-a-Lab has the posture that they don't go together because someone says something to you. I wish all of the callers taught round dancing. I think a mixer is round dancing. I don't think you have to do high level to be a round dancer. I think when you do a mixer, you're round dancing. And I think I ask you to help me and all of us together to promote this idea, and that we not let the two programs be separated, that we continue as one program with a lot of people involved.
Thank you much, Pete. We certainly enjoy hearing from the Round-a-Lab people, and I feel that everybody in this room feels pretty much the same way. As you say, unfortunately, there's a lot of other people in a lot of other rooms, and their concentration is on definitions, what level of squares we're going to get into, and they're the furthest thing from their mind is round dancing, or even dancing smoothly to music, which I feel that this can help us all with, and it's badly needed in our activity, in both activities. So we'll do what we can, and any concrete suggestions that you might have, please pass them in to me or at Herb in his round dance session this afternoon, and get involved, because I feel this is what it's needed, and talk about it, get other people involved, and get them down here. Skeptics are very are apt not to come, of course. But if there's some borderline people that want to know what it's all about, we certainly would like to include them in our discussions and hopefully give them the feeling that rounds and squares do go together, and what can we do to promote and perpetuate that idea. Now, we did have some more hands, and I would like to just take them because we don't want to ignore anyone. Okay.
Good morning. My name is Carol Place, and I'm from Columbus, Georgia. My husband, Paul, is a square dance caller, and I am a round dance cure. And so most of the time when they get one, they get the other. And when my husband begins his square dance classes, I think one thing that we emphasize that makes it much easier for me later on is he stresses dancing to the beat of the music, even a square dancer. And we find that we have smoother square dancers, and they blend into the round dance program in a much easier manner. And I think from the very beginning, if you can stress that dancing to the beat of the music and with the time, it really helps a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have? Oh, we have all kinds of hands. Let's hear from some of the ladies.
I'm Betty Carmen from Rochester, New York. My husband Jerry is a caller, and I'm a round dance cure. We've been finding in our area that some of the callers are accusing round dance leaders of stealing their dancers. And we do have a very strong round dance program. We even have round dance basic clubs. My husband is one of the co-moderators for our local callers group, and he is trying to amalgamate the two groups together a bit. But there is definitely some friction there. My husband himself, in his his square dance classes, does try to do round dance basics, but he has met with very strong opposition from the square dance clubs that he's teaching the classes for. They tell him no. He does disguise them, and sometimes they don't recognize it until he's gotten quite a ways, because he disguises it all as mixers. He makes up his own mixers. He uses the ones that people have mentioned, and he will make up his own that involve line apart together in box, and putting in only one new round dance figure, say, every few lessons, along with some square dance figures, and this is why he doesn't get caught all the time. But he has to sneak them in sometimes. He has run one where he didn't do that, but he did a lot of all-round dance basics, and the club was very angry with him. But out of that particular class, we did get a definite interest, and we ran a round dance class after they graduated from their square dance class. And from that group, we have more people who are still dancing than we do from a regular class that didn't get the basics from rounds, because they have both things to do.
That's an interesting statistic, that you retain more dancers in the activity by offering rounds. That's very interesting to me. B and I are in a situation where we're running our own program now. We don't really have to account to clubs or committees or program chairmen. We find that that's kind of nice. But I'd like to throw the question out. Those of you who do call for square dance clubs and who are involved with rounds, your partner perhaps is a round dance cure, have you had flack from clubs not to do rounds? How many of you have had this kind of flack? Really?
Not my own clubs, other clubs.
Other clubs, yeah. Well, it's very interesting. Then, do you feel that perhaps CALLERLAB should address a publicity program, or try to get some sort of information out to square dance clubs presidents, and program chairmen that a blending of these two dance forms would be advisable, because perhaps we can do something about it, perhaps we can't. Should we address this issue? You might talk about that with Herb this afternoon in his round dance and give that some thought. We certainly would like to try to do everything possible to keep round dancing as a part of the overall square dance activity and see them move together. I personally believe in it, and I feel it's healthy. I feel we do retain more. And my answer to some of these clubs is, my other question would be, what level is this club that you were talking about? Were they interested only in the advanced and more higher levels of square dancing, or was it a mainstream type club, their dancing ability? Mainstream and plus. You see, a lot of times the decisions of clubs boil down to a few people in the club, 2 or 3 couples who have come along for a long time. They've been the most enthusiastic people. The way they were trained is now reflected. They're the ones that are now president, program chairman, and they're the mainstay of the clubs. Consequently, their personal attitude is reflected in this. I know that at the higher levels, rounds are simply discarded, but in a mainstream club, that does surprise me a little bit. Now, we have run out of time, and Herb's given me 2 signals already, and we